We are delighted to have all of you here tonight at Swinburne's first Learning from Entrepreneurs event of 2025. My name is Rick Laferriere. I'm a lecturer in Soho, the School of Business Law and Entrepreneurship, and really excited to be here. And in fact, tonight is a very special evening because along with the AGSE as our main hosts, we also have two additional hosts to this event, and they include Ty Melbourne, a very strong entrepreneurship organization that we're going to hear from tonight before the end of the evening. And then additionally, we're delighted to have our Entrepreneurship Club as a co-sponsor of this event. And what I'd like to do now is call the Entrepreneurship Club, come up to the front and do our acknowledgement of country.
Thanks so much, Rick. I would like to start with the acknowledgement of the country. I would like to acknowledge the Aboriginal people of the Kulin Nation, who are traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging that respect to all Aboriginal and the Torres Strait Islanders people. I would like to pass on the mic to Aditi to just give a brief of our club. Thanks so much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Aditi. I'm president of Swinburne Entrepreneurship Club. We're thrilled to co-host this event with AGSE and Ty Melbourne. It's incredible to be part of this room, like full of passionate people in the room, and we're here to celebrate entrepreneurship. At our club, we turn ideas into action through startup session, collaboration with industry, and events like this. Thank you, Rick, for supporting us all the time, giving us your guidance. Thank you so much. No matter what your background is, doesn't matter. It's business, arts, engineering. We welcome all of you because it's curious about, it's more about innovation and real-world learning. We would love to have you on board. Feel free to come say hi after the event once it's all done. And even look us at the online and connect with us. Thanks again for everyone for being here, and I hope tonight inspires your big idea. Thank you. Enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much. And again, welcome to everybody. And I've had a sneak peek at Neil's slides, and I know we're going to hear a lot about Neil and his journey tonight. So, without too much of his story, for those of you that don't know, Neil Saligrama is one of Melbourne's, one of Australia's leading entrepreneurs, and his main organization is One Bill, but you may know him a bit more from another one of his ventures, Compare Connect. And he's going to share his journey and his story, and I'm not going to take too much more time. We're going to hear from Neil, we're going to do a little one-on-one interview, and then we're going to turn it over to all of you to ask some questions. So please feel free to think about what it is that you'd like to ask Neil as he shares his journey, or questions that pop into your mind. So that's the flow of what will have happen. And now I'd like to introduce Neil, everyone.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks to Swinburne University, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and also to emerging students here. Hope to see you guys build some amazing businesses in the future. I'll sort of thought about this to do it a bit more interactive and share my story with you. I came to Australia from India in 2002, and I've got a number of interesting stories to share. So before I go into the personal story, what led my journey to come to Australia, I'll just show you what our business has done, and then I'll connect the stories back so you can probably understand that and the magnitude of what's really led to it. So how many of you guys have ever switched your energy connected broadband, saved some money on any of that? All right. So when I actually came from India, I mean, born, raised in Bangalore, you don't have the choice of switching your electricity or your broadband, at least was not there back then. So when I came as a student, I couldn't really comprehend the fact that there were so many retailers and which one's the right one, which one's the wrong one, and the complexity of doing that was always intrigued me to come up with a simpler solution. And I'll tell you the stories of what led to what and stuff. But as a business, what we built from literally a startup about 12 years ago to become Australia's largest utility connection comparison platform. Our mission was to simplify comparison of any bills for that matter, or connection of any services. And we grew from literally, counting a few hundred sales a month to doing over 250,000. We contribute about 40% of Australia's move at the moment. And we work with over 2,500 real estate agents, 8,000 brokers, and with all major energy and telco companies in the country. So I'll just quickly go back and just tell you a story. It'll be quite interesting as you guys hear it. So that's the two parts of business we have. And if you can see those brands back then. So Compare and Connect, that's the main brand in Australia, which enables comparison, connections, and you probably have heard of more bigger brands like Compare the Market, Meerkats and stuff. So we introduced Compare the Market in 2014-15 to Australia. So we were the technology, they were the brand, they came up with the marketing campaign, but all the work for technology, human resources, retailer relationship, all that was built by our business. And I'll tell you a story what it led to what, but the brands are Compare and Connect, Fast Connect in New Zealand, Your Porter is a movers brand which was owned by a real estate industry. So like Barry Plant, Bell, Hawkins Stewart, Buxton, Jealous Grey, Biggin & Scott, they all had a skin in the game. So I acquired that business in 2018 to become part of our business. And then joint venture with Ray White. So you probably guys know Ray White and Loan Market Group. So Loan Market's the largest home family-owned brokerage business. So we've got a joint venture. So all those customers who use Ray White use our platform. And then in 2020, I saw the complexities grow from comparison to connections. And the idea was like, can we really build one single platform where all bill management could be done? Like, bring all your bills in one place, pay your bills, split your bills, bundle your bills, manage your mum's property, dad's property, you could do all of that. So that's just happening at the moment. So that's just an idea for you guys to look at what's really led to that evolution over the last 10, 12 years. These are the brands, more than the brand of Compare and Connect or Your Porter, you probably see as brand behind the brand. So if you have used the real estate brands like Jealous Grey, Buxton, Fletcher's, Biggin & Scott, Marshall White, Care & Burton, all our partners, every single one of them. Out of 16 major brands in Victoria, 14 use our platform. So you probably know them through those names. That's the evolution of the business. So I'll tell you a story now before I get to that. I graduated from Bangalore in 2001 doing my engineering, and the aspiration was all set that I'll be an engineer and potentially find an engineering job. As luck would have it, 9/11 just happened. Before I got my results, we had been placed at a company called ABB, guys know ABB, and the jobs got deferred indefinitely for 6, 8, 12 months. And my dad had just retired. So financially it was very hard coming out of university and sitting at home and not doing anything. So firstly, knocked out in 2001, job got deferred. So I said, okay, well, I can't sit at home, I gotta just contribute something back. And back then there was contact centers coming, so a lot of US companies were outsourcing. IT-enabled services was actually really becoming a big thing in Bangalore. So I joined a call center, and a lot of our family members and friends said, why are you really going into call centers? Because that's literally like driving auto rickshaws. There was like sort of a blue collar thing, and it was really ridiculous for joining a call center. But anyways, I had to go, and I started my job at a lovely company called 247customer.com, which is a very large center. And we were trained on a campaign called AT&T. Now, that's about 6 months, and I found a good friend who said, well, going to UK and US is sort of door shut, no stipend, no sponsor, you're not going to get the exposure as you would love. So why don't you try Australia? It's cheaper. I mean, if you go back then, the conversion was 1:20 or 22 rupees, whereas US was at that time was about 50 odd, and pound was a lot higher than that. So obviously, what we could afford was, okay, put all the money. So my dad had to really mortgage and borrow money and everything to really send me to Australia. So that's how, you know, the journey for me happened, where I came here in July, and you know, we had 20 hours to work, and this is a story of every student coming into the country, no big deal. And so there were sort of three major opportunities to work. You can either go into cleaning, go into restaurant, or drive cabs. Driving cab was too hard for me, so I couldn't really do that. Restaurants was like also quite limiting, so I said, well, that's not going to happen. So I did a bit of cleaning. So I cleaned a Priceline shop at High Punch Shopping Centre, and you know, it was a good learning experience to bend my back and make some money out of it. But you know, this is where I'll start connecting dots for you guys. I learned 6 months of telemarketing. I worked for AT&T. Though everyone at that time said, oh look, you're never going to use these skills, you're an engineer, your degree is engineering. Selling AT&T product was a game changer for me. What I learned for 6 months, when I came here, the next best job I could find was selling timeshare. And if you guys sold timeshares, one of the hardest things to sell. So I found a job here at Leveson Street in North Melbourne to sell timeshare, sending you know, a 19,000 product, and you've got to invite husband and wife to, or a couple for a conversation and qualify them and all of that. So that was my first job, and fetched me $17 an hour. I was absolutely delighted. So, you know, what I thought was a small thing to learn was a real connecting dot when I came to Australia. So I did that, selling timeshares, and I did pretty well, really well selling timeshare. And I finished my graduation, so I graduated from RMIT, doing masters in engineering. And the challenge was to find again a job related to your study. And back then there was nothing still available. So what really led was there was emerging disruption of telcos. Telco had just got deregulated. So Telstra had, Telecom Australia had just become Telstra. And then you had Optus emerging and many other telcos coming out of it. So I sold a truckload of telco sales. And we were outsourcing in Philippines, and I led massive campaigns out of outsourcing to Philippines and India and stuff. So that gave me an exposure of, you know, what to sell, how to sell, and a bit of that. And in 2010, I started my business called Thought World, which was basically an outbound telesales business, selling energies and telcos to a large company. But we were actually renting out of car sales building at 449 Punch Road. And car sales, obviously, everyone knows car sales. We had this luxury of sharing the same lift, and Greg Roebuck and Cam McIntyre were in the same lift, were the CEO, and back then the CFO. Now this Cam runs the show for car sales. And we would get literally 2 minutes to spend time with this lovely guy called Greg, who was the founder of car sales. And he started sharing the tips around building business and how we should do it. So I founded Compare and Connect, and this is where it gets interesting for you guys. There were two separate markets in the country. You had the likes of iSelect. iSelect, most of you guys know iSelect and Compare the Market. They were large comparison businesses, and you have connection businesses like Connect Now and Direct Connect, who are owned by, again, AGL, which is a multi-billion-dollar company. Snowy Hydro, which owns Direct Connect. They were the two largest companies. But those two markets were operating in silos. So like comparison businesses only did comparison, which means if you're looking for a better deal for your energy, telco, whatever, you use comparison sites. And if you want to move your house, when you're moving your home from A to B, these companies will connect your essential services, gas, electricity, phone. So in 2014, I launched Australia's first comparison and connection business together to bring both comparison and connection together. So if you're a mover, there was no mechanism to really search for a better deal. So you would connect at the most expensive deal, and then you realize 6 months later that you're paying huge bills. So the problems I faced in the early part of not knowing the market and the jargons of it, I realized that I could apply by bringing both parts of comparison and connection together, and we founded Compare and Connect. And because we didn't have money, I had no capital, no background in running business, none of that, and no experience as well. So we started the business, and the interesting element was how do you really now grow the business? So and this is one of the probably very intriguing thing for you guys, where generally when you go to any market you have competitors and you compete with your competitors. And when I entered the market, there were so many of them, from iSelect to Direct Connect and all of them. And we became one of those businesses where we worked with most of our competitors because we offered our white label products for them to use it. So if you look at that journey where from 2014 onwards, we grew to be BRW Fast 100 companies, like literally 6 years in a row there. And that could happen because we gave away our technology, what we built, to all our competitors. And we created white label solutions, so we launched Compare the Market, we launched Costco, so all of them came using our technology, and that took off in a massive way. And so in 2016, Domain were the disruptors in the portal business, like realestate.com was #1, and Domain was sort of a disruptor back then. Domain knocked the door, and they wanted to buy into the business. So I sold 50% to Domain in 2016, and we grew that year on year to still be growing at about 70-80% rate. In 2018, we acquired many other brands, as you can see there. Your Porter we acquired. We did a great partnership with Direct Connect and another business called MoveMeIn. And in 2020, we put a joint venture with Ray White and Loan Market Group. In 21, we became the APAC Fast 500 companies. We are one below zero at number 285. And then in 2023, we sold the business to Origin Energy, which is the largest energy retailer. So that's a bit of a story for you guys to saying what's really happened. But that's really boring. That's just what's happened from a technical perspective. I'll tell you a real story, which is probably a bit more enticing and engaging from an entrepreneurial perspective and the background perspective. And what I've learned in my life, and I'd love to share that with you, and you got Saurabh and Sheila and everyone from Thai Network who have been through similar or a bigger or a smaller journey, but very tangible journeys like that. I'm born bred into a very small middle class family from Bangalore. No one in my entire family for generations have done any business. We have been pure professionals working for a company or been a lecturer or a professor in the university. That's the far-fetched thing. So when I thought of becoming an entrepreneur, or maybe entrepreneur is the wrong word at that point in time, I wanted to fetch a job for myself. and I thought, what can I do to really find a job? That's exactly how it's really started. But before I started, 2010 I started, but knowing the naivety, I probably made all the mistakes one can imagine. Wrong accountant, bad partners. When I said bad partners, they were not bad as such, but they turned out to be bad because of the situation, what it led to. So 2010 I got married, and within 3 months of my marriage, I had a debt of about close to $1.4 million. How the debt happened was, as we were selling the telco services, we were subleasing it from M2, which is one of the wholesalers. It was a $1 billion listed company. And we would borrow and resell those products. So technically when they give the mobile plans and stuff, it's actually under our name, and we then sell it to the subscribers or the consumers. And the zero tolling, so customers would take the phones to say they'll activate it, and they did activate the prepaid market. And 2010-11 was interesting when Vodafone launched their plan. So Optus was selling $99 unlimited plan, which we would sell it. Vodafone came and offered the same thing for $45. So a lot of these customers, when you have in a prepaid market, and you can't control these markets because it just happens to be so, they're like, why would I pay $99 when I can get same for $45 from Vodafone? So we were kind of sold it. They've got the phone, they wouldn't return it, they won't turn on our SIM card. So our zero tolling, customers were actually not on billing, but I've got the handset, but not have got the activation done. So we had a clause in our contract where if your zero tolling goes beyond 8%, M2 can completely cut the contract. So technically what happened was, we're growing at a rate where zero tolling increased, so we were in catch-22. Either you come up with more money, which we didn't have, give you a house, or raise money. So none of those things happened, so we were like sort of caught in a rock and a hard place. So M2 put like as I said, naivety, the contract had the personal guarantees. I'm not sure how many of you guys, as students, know it, don't sign personal guarantees. I'm sure now things are a lot more advanced with the AI, you can find what to do and what not to. But back then was like there was no advice. So I had signed a commercial contract which had PG attached to it. I realized from M2 got a letter in September 2011 saying, look, your outstanding debt is this, you've got two choices, come up with more security or your house is gone. So my house was put on caveat. And as I said, it's early stage of my marriage, 6 months into it, and I'm telling my father-in-law about my debt problems. How do I really solve? Like, do I go bankrupt? Do I come back to India? I was 31. It was very tough, and I'm saying in a jovial way today, but it was very draining, very, very stressful to say the least, because you're sort of stuck where, and the revenues were tiny. It's not that I had a lot of revenue. The net EBITDA for us was making about $200,000 business. Suddenly you've got to pay 7 times your earnings. You can imagine what it takes to really repay that money. So 1.4 mil technically. So, and here is my first chapter of life. It's called righteousness. Like, one of the things which make you as an entrepreneur is your ability to do the right thing when it takes everything out of you. And that defines your character. So the choice for me was, when I went to a lot of accountants and lawyers and everything, said, look, there's no way on earth you're going to repay this money because you don't have it. One, you're young enough, so probably for you it's go belly up and start fresh. It's going to take 3 years. It's going to stay, but at the end of the day, you're never going to pay, so don't do it. Third is, if you do anything interesting here with negotiating anything further, you're going to go backwards with them too because they've got you. The agreement is like, literally, no way you're going to escape this. But, growing with, everyone's got the family values and upbringing values and stuff like that. My dad always used to say, like, don't run away from your problems because they'll haunt you. So don't show your back. When something's gone wrong, you rather fall forward because you at least know what you're falling. But if you go backwards, it's going to come hunting at you. So one night, it was about 10:30, 11 o'clock, and we were about to go to bed, and I said to my wife, look, I think I'm fatigued now. Fighting this battle is too hard. And I'll probably call someone for tomorrow and we'll prepare for filing papers for bankruptcy. And she said, look, you hit the rock bottom, you can't go any further down because you've lost everything, there's nothing there. You might as well just see what you can do. So anyway, I went to bed. In the morning, something happened. I just felt, okay, probably I should fight it, and let's go and ask for a debt agreement. I went to M2, to the wholesale director, Scott Carter was his name, and said to Scott, look, I need 3 years to repay this money. I've done all the right things. where we got trumped is the market situation. Vodafone's come, Optus is not giving us any other plans, so let's give me time and I'll pay you this money. They've agreed to pay, but I said, look, if you default any payment, that's it. You're going to lose the money, you're going to lose the house. Anyways, we took the repayment and we lock in a plan to repay the money. And that's the choice you end up making. When I say righteousness, is whether you run away from your problem you caused, or you prepare to fight it. And the decision I made at that time is like, if I think I'm capable of, doing anything at a level, say 1 meter from the ground, the debt for me was about 15 meters above my height. So only thing you can do is literally surrender to the situation. And either you believe in yourself, you believe in God, you believe in anything you want to believe in, you got to believe in something. If you don't believe in something, it's very hard to go forward. Whether it's yourself, you call consciousness, you believe in God, you believe in a person, an advisor, it doesn't matter what it is, family, you got to find a very strong reason why you're doing and what you need to do. That was my time, and I think I changed from a person who was filled with fear and failure to say, look, I'm accepting it. And the moment you start saying, I'm accepting this problem, then it's accepted. Half the issues are gone. Now you got to just face it. So we signed the agreement in end of November 2011, and 1.4 mil, as I said, and you wouldn't believe it, October 24, 2012, we repaid the entire debt of 1.4 mil. Now what led from there to next 10, 12 months is amazing, because as you accept the debt and take the courage to fight it, there were a number of things which came to help my life. We won a massive contract with Energy Australia. True Energy was the brand back then, and True then acquired a company called Energy Australia in New South Wales for $1 billion, and they wanted a big channel to acquire all their customers. And here is one of the sales manager who actually solicited good businesses to come and pitch for it. And this is exactly how, I'm not exaggerating, we didn't have a receptionist back in the office. I had about 12, 13 people who were working for me at Victoria Street here in Richmond. And every phone was an outbound call, so you can only make an outbound call. So when the call's not made outbound, the PABX will have the call come back. So it'll ring your phone if the phone's put down. And it's lunchtime and everybody's out for lunch. And this sales manager takes our number from, and no one used to make our inbound call, so we never cared about inbound. We thought we'll make only outbound, we'll make sales. This sales call comes in where every phone's actually kept down, so it rings. And I was like, well, there's so many phones ringing, so let me pick up one. I pick up the call, and this is Energy Australia saying, we would like to meet you because we heard about you doing a program for one of our competitors. And 99 on 100, that call would have gone to the voicemail. No one would have returned it because we didn't have a receptionist, nothing. So things start happening where, and it's an example of that, one of that. But my brother was studying at Victoria University, so he had to be sponsored because his visa was finishing. We're a company first year into it. We sponsor for a 457. You wouldn't believe it, the visa comes to us in 14 days. So he stays back to give me help and hand to grow it. So like that, miraculous things happen from November 2011 to October 2024. October 24, 2012, and we repaid the entire debt for M2. And the CEO back then, Vaughan Bowen, said no one has ever taken debt at M2 like this and repaid way before the time. So he gave me that thing saying, look, if anything we could do in the future, we'd love to partner with you and do it. And I'll connect the dot back to you in the future what happened. So that first part was like righteousness. You gotta back yourself, have the right ethos to ensure you do the right thing. And sometimes it'll be very, very difficult, scary, and that's what makes you who you are, on what basis you take on. Because any entrepreneur at any point in time, I'm pretty confident that they would have taken a position on strategy, on people, on shareholders, on the market, on the regulation or whatever, and they've come through it. 5 minutes? Okay. So that's just one part of it. So the second part, as we did the deal, I'll kind of wrap up the 3 stories, then I can have Richard to comment about it. And it's also important, the second important thing I say is the courage, have the right courage as a leader to make tough decisions. So I said I did a deal with Domain in 2016, and Domain's listed $2.5 billion business back then, now it's 3. Our relationship was fantastic for the first year and a half, and then for the next year and a half it turned really, really bad. All the promises they said they'll do it, didn't do it. So Hero was stuck, and we were about 9.5%, 10% of Domain. So we're worth about 300 mil to Domain at that point in time. And Domain were not willing to sell out the assets. And I was not prepared to stay because we couldn't grow enough with their help. So there came a time when Channel 9 acquired Fairfax. There was a big $4 billion merger. There's a change of control, and I had to issue default notice to Domain. Say you're in default because of your obligation, which we did. And mind you, it's $1 billion business. If you have to do it, you've got to be prepared. And my lawyer said, John Hutchins from Cornwall said, make sure, Neil, you do it all the right things, because if you get this right, they're going to nail you 10 feet under the ground here on 342, and you'll be on the front page for all the wrong reasons. So we got the business back in 19, so I bought, and then subsequently I raised about 20-odd mil capital and acquired all those assets in 2021. And there's the last challenge, which I'll wrap in 2 minutes, Richard, was you're now have a relationship with 2,500 real estate partners. And mind you, when we have partners like that, this network is an embedded network. So this will, the leads you're getting through, where a lot of big companies rely on Google, Facebook to get the leads. I built the network with $0 spent because we didn't rely on Google, we didn't rely on Facebook, we didn't rely on any print media, nothing. So entire network was built where we got the money first and then we paid to the partner. So it's a very unique network we built. And in 22, we had this largest network of leads coming through, and we're doing what we're doing in terms of sales. The energy market in Australia after 25 years went through a most difficult time where energy crisis happened. Where retailers for the first time said, we don't want your customers because your wholesale rate was about $850 and retail was about 50 cents. So they were losing money. Now here's a situation where from a profitable, very fast growing business, we were like losing money hand over fist. In COVID, when we transitioned, we didn't lose any staff, we kept everybody. But this was much harder than COVID transition because the market itself was wobbling. So one of the things we did was that I had to come up with an idea to fund the business. So short term, I sold my house, put my super money. I won't recommend any of you guys doing it, but it was important to do it to keep the business on. And interestingly, Brookfield, which is one of the large firms from US, put a bid to acquire Origin Energy for $20 billion, which changed the landscape of Origin for a long, long time. And Origin were our partners, so I stuck a deal with Origin to invest in our business, and one thing led to the other, and they were in love with our business to the point that they paid the price they need to pay to eventually acquire the business. So I sold in September 2023 to Origin, majority stake. I still remain and act as a CEO of the business to run the day-to-day stuff and their business. But it's been a journey where I said, 5 things I've learned about being a good entrepreneur is the righteousness, do the right thing when it takes the hardest to do it. Be courageous, take the tough call, because that's the way you're going to go forward. Consciousness or awareness, it's very important to be aware and know where you're going to be disrupted. The businesses which were 10 times bigger than us, like iSelect, were massive, and we were nobody, and we defeated all of them. So you never know where the disruption is going to come. So always keep yourself grounded, be aware at all times. Very important. The 4th one I would say is keep your body, mind, and your intellect aligned, which we call as a yoga. Because if it's not aligned properly, it's not going to give you the intuition levels. As an entrepreneur, you've got to have the intuition level. You've got to pick what's going to come tomorrow, today. And sooner you do it, and that'll come when you're really, really in love with what you're doing and completely be detached as well. So one of the things is you can't be worried. If I do this, what's going to happen? what will that do, what will this do. If it's the right thing to do, just back yourself and do it and leave the results to whoever you believe in to leave it, because it will come the right way. And last but not the least, no matter what you end up doing, how smart you are, how intellectually capable you are, how connected you are, you need to have a degree of fortune. That you call it as luck, you call it as fortune. But I also say, when I say fortune, is your preparedness to see the opportunity and to convert that into executable ideas. So that's very important. If you're not prepared, you're not going to see what's there, and you might say, oh, I was not lucky. So at all times, if you're in sync with your ambience or your atmosphere, more or less that fortune will come your way, and things will start scaling at the level you want it. So that's been my five things which I've learned, and I can give you stories on that when required. But for now, I'll just shut up and thank you for listening to my story. Thank you very much.
All right, excellent. We're all hooked up now. Thank you very much, Neil. That was just a wonderful story. I had a chance to chat to Neil just a few days ago, getting in the lead up to this event, and I said, and Neil shared with me 2 or 3 little stories about his past, and I said, that's great. With this, I'll be able to come up with a couple of questions for you. The next thing, after seeing all of his story and everything he's gone through, I sent him a list of about 35 questions, and I said, this is such an amazing story. And I think so much of what you're talking about is the mindset that you really put forward into becoming an entrepreneur. And you've talked about your 5 things to keep in mind, but thinking of that mindset, how would you describe that mindset that you think an entrepreneur has?
I'll say in one line, I often believe that your progress is a difference of your mind and your mindset. And I say mind as an infinite capability to do anything you want to do. And your mindset is the limiter, which sets you a boundary of things are, oh, you can only do this much, or you can only do that, or it's not going to work, or it's because of this, it's because of that. I would ideally say have no mindset. Completely relinquish that if you can. It's hard to do it, but if you can keep your mindset as low as you can, then it's just mind, and if there's no mindset, you literally can power through it.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, one of the very interesting things you talked about in your presentation is the fact that you were the technology provider, and of course Swinburne University of Technology. And I wanted to ask about a couple of questions related to technology, and the first is really how engaging with technology really helps you scale your business.
Yeah, I mean, look. The strengths of being here when we set up in Australia is like you can set the business up pretty quickly because the system gives you that chance to really register a company in minutes and get to trading straight away. The scaling is an issue because of the limitation of manpower we have if you want to do it here in Australia. So the challenge we faced was sourcing good talent and keeping it. We're a fully onshore business, so we keep everything here. And that's just the policy we made a long time ago. So for us, that was limiting. So we had to come up with ways, how do we really do these things? And the only way we could do is put the right technology. And tech also gave us an edge in terms of, if you look at large, big scale businesses, they take time in implementing an idea to execute it. And we could do that a lot faster. Like I'll give you an example is, if you go to our website, Compare and Connect, and you put your address, we could pick your meter number because we got the database of most of the houses in the country, and we won't ask you any further question, apart from the life support. But you go to any other website to compare your electricity bill, there'll be 10 questions. Do you have solar on your house? You're single, you've got 3 people, 5 people. So that's where it comes where you need to be advanced in making it easy for a consumer. And also that's your competitive advantage. And we took tech as our means to really break the market. And that's really what's well for us.
Excellent, excellent. And that you just brought up the point about being 100% based here.
Yeah.
And I know, and again, a lot of what we work with our students here at Swinburne is around cybersecurity and the threats that are happening in that space constantly. How does a business stay on top of those threats and work to deal with that?
Yeah, I think there are 2 parts of this answer from my perspective, and every founder or CEO will have it different ways. There is a number of methods to keep your data safe and your cyber safe, and you do what it takes on one end of it. But the extreme important end on the other side is the culture of the company. I think what really happens in most of the cases is not the external party affecting you. It's more often than not, it's your internal person or internal damage which comes out of it. And that's leading to the culture you build in business. Because if you really have a toxic culture and not really keeping your internal pond clean, that is the biggest problem where you can lead into hacking or people asking for ransom and stuff. And more often than not, that's the biggest thing. I mean, look, you got to keep. From our perspective, we've always had we're a heavy data-driven business because we integrate with a number of prop techs. We've got property data, we've got people's driver's license to all the sensitive information. So you've got to build all those ecosystems to keep it as neat, clean, and keep the checks at time, because we go through all the data checks and PCI, ISO, all those things. But that's one part. But for me, the most important part is external stuff, leave it. That's just, you're going to find A, B, C levels to keep on advancing that part of it. How close are you with the team to ensure that there is no toxic culture? Because if you can take that out largely, more or less you're in safe hands. And your people are the biggest assets in the business. And if they're not in the right zone, that's where it's going to start hurting you. So we've and I say this with a lot of pride, I've got about 175 staff in my business, and over 46 staff have done over 10 plus years with me.
That's amazing.
And that's just like, we're like a family there, and that goes a long way. So I think it's very important to keep the culture of the business.
Well, and
have an open door policy to address any of those issues. Yeah.
And that's jumping onto the second page of all my questions is about who you look for to join your organization in terms of employees, in terms of partners, in terms of organizations to work with.
I'll sort of break down into probably 2 parts here. Look, when we were a small company, we were open, and so we couldn't pay the top wage. We couldn't attract by saying, oh, we're gonna give you all these fancy things to attract the talent. So what we actually looked for was people who actually need the job, not want the job, but need the job. And regardless of a talent, can we actually train them to build loyalty, to hold them? Because one of the things you don't want in industries like ours is you've got so much money spent on training. So we spend about 3 months to train someone to educate on what it takes to understand an energy market or a telco market, because it's extremely compliant market. You get fined if you do the wrong thing. So you don't want those assets when you spend 3 months training to lose them to a competitor. So we build ecosystems where we attract someone who's average, but someone's more needing the job than wanting the job in the first phase of it. So that built a bit of an ecosystem where we could go and help them. Someone looking for a home loan, someone's want to borrow a bit of money, or someone wants a sponsorship, someone wants any part of that help, which a company could go and do it for them. And that laid the foundation for people to stick around, because they thought we can rely on individually me or the business to get some help. That's the early part of it. Then once we were like a decent sized business, then you got to hire people who are smarter than you. And that's where you come up with an option to, where they have an ESOP options where they earn into your business and be a part of business. So we had a number of those ESOP options where a lot of them thought that it's their company, not just mine, it's just their company. And as a founder, like from start, we grew and raised a lot of money, and I still held about 66% of the share of the business. So I had all the drag rights and stuff. But the company, the staff had good 5-6% because they all had accrued their contribution to the sweat equity, not cash. So that really went a long way for us. So we literally from nothing to 100 mil business for us. We only raised 20 mil, and that too in late 2020 when we raised it. Up until then, bootstrapped. So staff were the real assets because they built everything for us. And that's very essential. So our tech turn started 2018, where we attracted people from car sales, drive.com, and they were like amazing talent. And they couldn't actually grow up the ladder because of whatever the big companies were restricting them to. So they came and wanted to really explore themselves. So we gave that platform, and they earned good equity. And so when Origin stuff happened, they were all delighted that the time was well valued.
Well, and you brought up car sales now as a place that you're sourcing some
Yes.
high caliber people from, and you brought up car sales when you were talking about those original networks that you were building and developing, and I think it's really important for us to hear about how you've engaged in building your networks, and we've got Ty with us as well, and they're just an amazing entrepreneurship community that really supports people. So, what's your approach to engaging with the community? Because it's hard because you're so busy running the business.
I think building network is a very essential component of running any business. And what I found in network is, and I said, and I'll give you a couple of quick points, I said about Greg Roebuck a few times, and he told me early in 2014, he said, look, debt is cheaper than equity. So borrow money if it's good business, don't give away equity. Neil, I've learned the hard lessons, don't do it. And that stayed with me till well, I started in 2010, and no matter what happened, I didn't bring any other investor up until 2020. I mean, Domain was not an investor, it bought in, but I had the control of the business. But that's what you need to do. Like when your networking gives you, whether, for example, I'm with Ty for about 15 months now, you don't need to learn through your own mistakes. I've done a lot of mistakes. And they were like crucifying mistakes, and you pay a big price. You be smart and listen to other entrepreneurs, and that only will come with a good network. That's one part of it. So you can, like in our network, when I speak to Sheila or Saurabh, like I can say what I've done and how badly I've gone wrong, and so like they openly will talk to you about things they've gone wrong as well. So you can say, well, I shouldn't be doing that. You know what I mean? I guess like don't sign a contract with personal guarantees, and don't be stupid, putting your family at risk. Like many things like that. That's one part of it. But then the network also helps you connect the dots futuristically, because if someone's in other part of the world or other industry and they can help you bring the business opportunities and make it a lot more closer and easier for you to open the door. And in any business, when you're building, you've got to build the trust. And a lot of those times you can't build trust one-on-one. If you have the right network, they'll connect you to the right party, and they'll stand as a sounding board to say, no, this guy's a good guy, or this person's a good female CEO, you should work with them. That goes a long way. It's like rock and sand. If you really want to move big and quick, you've got to have the network. Without the network, you're not going to travel that journey. You're not going to make that fast. If you want to do that, build very strong network, and it's extremely important.
Yeah, and really for the students in the room tonight, that's really important for us to realize that they have to get out there and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent. And yeah, we're gonna. You've already got hands going up in the audience, Neil. Look, I think I might just conclude and just build on this, and it's something that is really important and relates back to social impact, and as you've grown your business, and it's it's clear, if I'm talking to you, the importance of contributing to community is also really important. So what does social impact mean for One Bill and Neil and
Yeah, look, there's a range of things we're committed to and will continue doing it. So one, at an employee level, it's a huge training we do for any incoming, and largely these are students who come as part of the first job for them to mentor and understand the dynamics of the business and the industry. That's one. We do sponsorships for the work visas and stuff, which is also quite complimentary for us. We sports-wise, we sponsor Renegades, so we're a big supporter of Renegades. We also support Melbourne City for soccer, so we do done work there. We sponsor through a partnership with Big and Scott for Heart Kits, so a lot of stuff on that front. Also with the Cancer Foundation through our Buxton relationship there. So a whole range of things we go and do it. I think it's very essential for a business to be connected with the community. So we work with a number of schools. So we sponsor schools on, if they're building landscaping things or whatever level required support-wise. Because our service is quite essential, so we can really, connect with any level of audience, because there's no one in the country without electricity and broadband, so it's pretty easy to connect, with our reach there. So it's a pretty broad range of support we do. I think it just brings, as I said, look, we don't spend anything on Google and make them any more richer. So we do have a little bit of budget where you can really allocate directly out to this, supports communities and partnerships.
Excellent. Well, with that, I've managed to touch on, I think, most of my topics, not all the questions, but it's time for all of you to jump in with some of your questions. So we've got a couple of roving mics, and we've got a first question right up here in the front row. So.
Hi, Neil. Thank you so much for coming today. So you told that networking is really important. So I myself try to go to a lot of networking events and try to talk to a lot of people. Generally, what happens with me is I connect to them on LinkedIn or connect to them on some socials, if that's But we are not able to take the connection further, or we are not able to network with someone further. What do you want to recommend to a college student about that? How do we take our networks further, talking about that?
Okay, it's a good question. There are two ways to see. You have to go out of your comfort zone, because unless you go out of your comfort zone, you're not growing. So there is growth, there is progress, there is success. There's 3 stages to it, right? Now, networking comes with relevance. Not just, you've got to find what's the chord which is going to connect with A and B. So if I just say, I want to just connect with A, B, and C, if there is no content and relevance to communicate, it's not going to hold on to it. So you've got to look at what is relevant to connect to a party on the other end, and lay the prepare for that when you go there. So just to give you an example, most of you, probably some of you guys know, I'll give you my example. So if I'm in one industry, let's say for example in utilities industry, and I want to go and talk to Jack Gans from Chemist Warehouse founder. Now, Jack's an entrepreneur, but a pharmacist by thing, and he's built a multi-billion-dollar business. You've got to find what is relevant, whether it's Jewish heritage, whether it's the network, whether it's the disruption, what's going. So you've got to find something so you can build a common ground to talk. And once you kind of learn that, and you learn with more diverse topics there, then you can connect with a large range of people. So it's called the bandwidth. So you start building the bandwidth, then you can engage them. So engaging is like, how quickly can you build a common ground? I'll give you one funny example. My name's not Neil. So I was on the phone, my name is Chetan. So when I was actually making calls from timeshare, so by the name I said Chetan, the other person would say Sheetan or whatever, and I would lose my 30 seconds explaining what my name actually meant. So one of my supervisors said, look, it's not going to work for you, man. You've got to change your name to something more relevant. So I said, what do you come up? They said, I'll change your name. Because one of the good sellers back then on the phone, I would sell pretty well. So he said, I'll come with the name Neil Armstrong. A brown guy, Armstrong, not going to work. So I said, I'll still take it, Neil. Neil's all right, I'll take Neil. Right, so Neil's become my professional name. So you got to make those subtle changes to be, relevant enough to connect with the right people.
Hi, my question is only for my information. As I understand it, you created a new software, that this software can help the utilities such as the AGA problems. The first question, what kind of the problems for the massive problem that has got at the moment in utilities solved? And secondly, as I understand, you was an electrical engineer graduated. How to transfer to the IT system and created the new software?
All right, okay. So the two parts, what are the problems in the utility market and how we've applied our technology to be relevant to solve some problems. See, utility market, as the deregulation happened, the government sold their networks out to private companies. So in Australia, you got generator, and then you got distributor, then you got transmitter, and then you got the retailer. There are 4 different segments. Some of the big ones own generation, distribution, and then retail. Some don't. Now the challenge before 2019 was, I'll give you a hotel example. Say, Saurabh wants to go and book at Hilton, and say Sheila wants to book, it's all in Flinders Street, let's say for example in the city, at Rendezvous Hotel, right? So the rack rate for those hotels are set by those hotels. So Hilton may charge $400 a night, Rendezvous may charge $260. But both may say, we're going to offer you 20% discount. But Sheila might even get 10% discount, and Saurabh may get 30% discount, but he's paying $400 and she's paying $260. Now obviously, I'm just giving you a common example. Actually the hotel for Sheila is cheaper. It's only 10% discount, but it's cheaper because the rack rate's a lot cheaper. Do that make sense? Yeah? So that's how broken the industry was. So AGL would say 25 cents a kilowatt hour, but I'm happy to give you a 20% discount. And Momentum Energy, which is owned by Tassie government, would not have any discount but offering you 19 cents. So 20% discount on 25 is 20 cents per kilowatt hour. You think you're getting 20% discount, but Momentum Energy is no discount, 19 cents a kilowatt hour. What would you really pick? If you're a little bit smart, you'll pick 19, but generally marketing takes over, so you end up picking a 20% discount. And what happens is they are pay on time discount. If you don't pay that on time, you get whacked with the entire thing. So that was how the industry was. So what we had to do, and none of the retailers had an API. So if I just make it simple, API, most of you understand. So everything was on CAF file. They would send a CAF file, then you got to take a CAF file and put it on the Excel and then come up with the rate. It was just as, and some of them still do that. And you'll be shocked as a student saying, really, in this day and age, that happens. So we had to really pull all the data and push those retailers to give API integration to say, well, the rates are now simple. So if gentleman X wants to come to our website and put their house address, we can literally show you like what's the cheapest deal available here. So if you come to us, we can tell you if you're on A plan, you're going to save X, and we can tell you monthly bill is this, we estimate this, and your saving is this. If you're not saving money, if you're on a better plan, we'll tell you you're on a better plan, don't switch. That wasn't available. That's one part of it. And how I applied my technology into the business, I think one of the key important things is you got to know what you don't know. And it's very important. If you don't know what you don't know, if you don't know what you don't know, it becomes a problem. I was not a very good engineer in that way, so like I didn't have the ability to code, though I did code to get out and get my graduate degree. But I had to find the person who's more practical. See, in a growing company, you don't want someone coming and doing a 5-year plan. It's just not going to work. So you got to find someone who's a doer and who's happy to be an example, to bend their back, roll their sleeves, and get things done. So I had to find a CTO who's willing to take that and say, I'm available at whatever time. Call me, but I'm going to get this done in 2 days. Not give you a 2-year plan, because it's not going to work for you. So identifying the right people and identifying what solutions will go where, that's where we became really, really quick. And well, if you look at our tech stacks across, we're #1 company to integrate with all the prop techs in the market, from MRI to Reaper to all of them. We have exclusive contracts where it's just us who integrate, nobody else integrates, and all of that. That comes a combination of negotiation, understanding technology, what's future, what might come up tomorrow, day after, and stuff like now. The batteries are coming, solar stuff are coming. So you got to be ahead of those times to really build those solutions. I hope I've answered your question. Okay. Nearly.
We're very short on time. We'll maybe take two more. Okay, so we'll time this one and one more maybe then. Go ahead, sir.
Hi Neil, Santosh here. Thanks for sharing such an inspirational story. So my question is, multiple times you mentioned that your competitors are paying to Google, Meta to get the users. How do you get them if you're not paying them? Because in today's world, a lot of entrepreneurs don't even know how to get users, right? And
yeah, that's a great point actually. Look, if you want to sell anything right, you got to understand what is the trigger point to that thing. So let's say, for example, if I'm selling electricity or a gas connection or a broadband connection, one is I can ping you where you'll have a bill shock. And let's say, for example, Saurav's getting billed by AGL or Origin or whatever. Saurav may not even worry about an extra $100 going up or down. So you can do a lot of marketing, meerkat to elephant to tiger, and entice him. It's only one moment when you entice and you pay all the money, right? So we don't do that. So the reason of 15% of Australian population move every year. So out of whatever number we have, there's 7.2 million electricity deregulated meters. So you have 1.2 million connections coming out every year. So where does those connections come? They come through real estate agents. You have portals, you got finance brokers. We've tapped all of them. So for them, technically, it's helping their customer to move. An extra $1 in the pocket for doing nothing. So we own that content. So you sign the contract, we know you're moving in, we know your property size, we know your property address, we can tell you, we can give you a heat pump, we can give you everything, which Google doesn't give you any of that. You have to fill it. Now you don't even have to fill it because I've got all the data, I've got the consent, so I'll come straight to you saying, hey, I'm going to connect A, B, C, and D in 2 minutes.
thank you for knowing the customer and their journey, buying journey.
And then where do you intercept it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great story, really
Thank you.
amazing. I'm just wondering, is there something special about the Australian market which has led to your success within the Australian market? And is it possible that you could take a model and put it into other markets overseas?
Yeah, that's another great question. Yes, I mean, Australia, the timing, like me coming out of the university and the deregulation, it's sort of, everything relies on the timing, so timing was perfect. So I was there at the time coming out of university, deregulation was happening in telco, then led to energy and stuff. So Australia is a lot ahead of any other country when it comes to deregulation and stability, so we're really well ahead of that. So we are taking our current model to US and UK. I was just chatting with Sheila about that. So my day starts very early and finishes pretty late because I'm connecting 2 other continents at the moment. And US is 150 million meters deregulated, was a 7, and UK is about 20. So 3 size for UK for us and about 20 times US market. So what I had done, if I had done in US, that would be worth about $4.5 billion right now.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Yep, and one more over here.
Yeah, hi. Business schools love to teach strategy and planning, and you talked about a 5-year plan not being appropriate. If you were writing now the case study on your journey, how would you write it and then put it back in the context of applying strategy and planning so that students could learn in that context?
Or don't be, please be go with, that's just the wording of don't undermine the strategy and planning. Your strategy and planning has to be there. Just don't. When I say that, you absolutely have to have strategy. You've got to have timelines. But what also is important is at every scale of the business, you need a different level of capability to adhere to it. You know, when you're running a large company, the question is if you're a global company and you're solving a global problem, the level of mindset you go with is quite different than if you're a local company solving the local things. Each require a different level of planning and strategy. So strategy is the core essence of your business. With that, when I say righteousness, it's just not doing the right thing. Do we have the right strategy? Do we have the right team? Do we have the right plan? All that is essential, very essential. And I just made it a little bit more on a principle of life to lead with that. When I say righteousness absolutely start with the right strategy, right people, right time as well. And you got to need all of that. And it's like planning to fail, failing to plan. We all know that. So if you don't have a plan and the strategy in play, you are bound to fail. So you need to have plan A very clearly laid out. And how do you really execute that? So, and one of the things, like this is the fundamental difference. When you're a young company, you're functioning without a structure. So, and this is very important for youngsters to know that. When you're young as a business, like a baby in mother's womb, right? Where it's doing everything what it's there. It's very fluid in nature. So that's how companies, like you're a CEO, you're a typist, you're an accountant, you're a cleaner, you're debt collecting, you're doing everything as one person or two people there. But as you get to a size, you've got to start laying the structure. So if you're a big company, you've got to lay the structure first before you start functioning. If you're a young company, if you're running a tea shop or a coffee shop and stuff, you're functioning before you have any structure. So don't get confused. In both those cases, you need to have strategy. You need to have planning, without which you're not gonna succeed. So sorry if that's come across like that. I don't undertake that.
All right, we've got. We'll let you chat to Neil in just a moment. So Neil, just thank you so very much for your time. Now, before we wrap, what we're going to do is, as we noted, Ty Melbourne is, of course, one of our co-hosts of our event, and we want to just give them a chance to close out our session tonight. So, could we have someone from Ty come on up and chat?
Oh, this might work. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Neil, what a story. I've heard it a number of times, and each time there's a new element to that story. I think you also know a lot about me. I stay at Hilton hotels, which I do. And yes, I know. That's right. He's looked me up. Yes, I don't entertain those. Do you want to switch now? Yeah. It's once every blue moon. But Neil, you've built a fantastic business, and it's always lovely to hear from you. Rick, thank you again for this opportunity. And I just wanted to say, look, when Ty Melbourne started in 2003, it was right across the road. That was the first event. So we've been associated with Swinburne for a very, very long time, 22 years. And many entrepreneurs, bright-eyed entrepreneurs at that time, starting out, have now become iconic entrepreneurs in this community. We've had a lot of programs at Swinburne, so really do value this association. I've been on the advisory committee for MEI for some years as well. Now, what is TIE? Basically, it's a network of entrepreneurs. It is one of the largest global networks of entrepreneurs. In fact, can I have a show of hands of who's been at a TIE global event in the last 12 months? Yep, Nandan, you were there. Prakash, you were there. Yes, indeed. Renata and Sheila. Yeah, so it's a really colossal network. For example, I was in California just a couple of weeks ago for the TIE. It's called TIECon California. CEO of Microsoft, CEO of Adobe, getting to hear from people who are researching, really commercializing quantum computers. It's just there's nothing like it. I think get a real buzz from that. And really what we're here to do is to help early stage aspiring or early stage entrepreneurs really to get to the next stage, whether that's through networking, whether that's through mentoring, increasingly angel funding, that's something we're doing as well. You know, exactly as Neil said, it takes one conversation to sit down with someone and say, don't sign a personal contract, a personal guarantee, and that'll save you a lot of headache. That's Thai in a nutshell. We do have student membership, so you're most welcome to join. Can I have a show of hands who's a charter member of Thai in this audience? So look around you for a friendly charter member. These are people with well-established businesses, and we're all here to give back. That's the spirit of Thai. So with that, Rick, I will conclude. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Can I just say to the Thai members, charter members, if you could please just stay back. We have one of our charter members, Samir, who is actually launching a book. So we'd like to acknowledge that. And if anybody else is interested in that, please do stay back. Samir has written a book on entrepreneurship and investments. He's a prolific angel investor himself in the Melbourne community, so you here want to hear something about that. And lastly, I'd like to also acknowledge Deepak. Deepak is from the Australia-India Business Chamber, here from Canberra, AIBC is a wonderful organization, and as Thai, we're looking to partner with AIBC in the coming years. All right, Rick, thank you very much. Back to you.
Excellent, and thank you all again. We're at that networking portion. We know the value, we've heard about the value. It is a chance. There will be some snacks, some food out in a minute. The bar has been reopened for everyone. Let's get to know one another a little bit. So please don't rush away. The whole point of these events is to make connections. We really value that. So that's it. Thank you all for your time and your energy. Students, well done coming out. Week 11. Let's have some fun.